talk about before we even get to this. We have to talk a little bit about wavelengths of light, okay? We know that light from the sun is not one color, it's multiple colors into one, right? Everybody good with that? You see that in rainbows, and prisms, and all the rest of that, okay? So when we look at wavelengths of light, chlorophyll has two different chlorophylls, A and B, all right? Those chlorophylls are just a little different colored greens. Everybody with me on that? One's a little lighter green, one's a little darker green. All right, why are they green? They green because they reflect the green wavelength of light, okay? So color is about reflection of light. Any color that you see is reflecting that particular, or combinations of those particular wavelengths of light from the sun or from artificial light. Black is the absorption of all those wavelengths, and white is the reflection of all those wavelengths. That's why in the summertime, lighter colored clothing is cooler than darker colored clothing because you're not absorbing all the energy from the sun. Does that make sense? Okay? So in a plant, they are reflecting green wavelengths of light, all right, and they're absorbing all the other colors. The blues and the purples and the yellows and the oranges and the reds are all being absorbed for photosynthesis. Everybody good with that? All right? Guaranteed there'll be a question in the quiz about what color of the wavelength of light the plant reflects. Okay, so make sure that we're paying attention to that. However, we also have a couple other colors that show up that are part of what we call a carotenoid family. We're going to see that in the lab we're doing on Thursday. Carotenoids are yellows and oranges and reds. Okay? When do they show up in Minnesota? When do we see those colors? In the fall. Okay? So chlorophyll A and B gets cold. Chlorophyll A and B actually break down, and what we see now are the yellows and the reds and the oranges that were there. They were just covered up by chlorophyll. And they help and will absorb some of that green wavelength, right? So it's a little extra kick boost for photosynthesis is what it is, okay? And you do have plants that aren't even green. Some have red leaves. If you've ever seen plants like that, they have red leaves or even orange leaves, and that's because they don't have chlorophyll. They're actually, their whole basis of their photosynthetic reaction is using carotenoids, right? Carotenoids, carrots are orange, okay? So that's where that word came from. And yeah, it is true. If you eat enough carrots, you can turn your skin orange. That can happen, all right? But you have to eat a lot of it, all right? But you can literally turn yourself orange. That's probably what Trump did. Wait a minute, did I say that? I'm sorry. I should have said that. All right, the orange man, okay? So what we've got going on is light, and light is weird too, because light's both a wave and a particle, right? And physicists still haven't figured that out yet. Why it's both a wave and a particle, all right? Because particles are photons. That's its particle, okay? So in this case, the plant is using the photons of light, and specifically, mostly all the wavelengths of light except for green. So we got to go back to what we talked about yesterday. Here's our anatomy, okay? Here's our thylakoid, our stack, our coin, okay? It has a space. They called it the thylakoid space, okay? You come up with anything cool, all right? That's what it is. And then we know there's a liquid that surrounds us, and that's the stroma, okay? And there's a phospholipid bilayer, just like there is in every membrane. So there's no, that's the uniformity we talk about, okay? So this is what happens, okay? And there's, again, 1,000 of these embedded in each thylakoid. You have what we call photosystems, and photosystems' job is to harness the energy from light, okay? And we have two of them in a plant, photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. So again, they didn't come up with big, huge names. They just named. Now, somebody always asks me, why is 2 over here and 1 over here and not? I don't know. I have no idea, okay? Here's your chlorophyll molecule, okay, right there, and you can see these little guys right here, and that's inside there, and this whole thing is called photosystem 2 complex. I don't need to know the name of it, okay? Light will strike these chlorophyll molecules, and what that does is excites electrons. Electrons, when they get hit by these photons, they literally whap them, right? And it puts them from a low energy state to a high energy state. So now I have these high energy state electrons, and they're just firing, all right, and they need somewhere to go. Right, because they're now in a high energy state. So they'll hop around inside this photosystem 2 until they reach something called the primary electron acceptor, the PEA, okay? It just grabs electrons, that's its job, all right? And once it grabs those electrons, it's gonna pass these electrons down an electron transport chain to photosystem 1. Everybody got that? I don't need any PC, PQs, I don't need to know any of that. I just need to know, just like in respiration, we're going to be, it's a series of oxidation reduction. Oxidize, reduced, oxidize, reduced, oxidize, reduced. Okay? We're just moving those electrons down. What is that energy is used for? That energy is used to pump hydrogen ions from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration. Does Does that sound familiar from respiration? Okay, same thing. So, just a little different way of getting the electrons excited, okay? Photons hit it, excite the electrons, PEA grabs it, passes it down the electron transport chain in photosystem 1. We're going to use that energy to pump in hydrogen ions. We've got to replace these because they left. So what a plant does then is take water and splits water into hydrogen electrons and oxygen, and some hydrogen over here too, and the electrons then here replace the ones that were lost here. Everybody with me on that? So the purpose of water is to replace the electrons that the plant loses in this process. And then oxygen diffuses through the membrane, diffuses out the stomata, and gets released into the atmosphere. Okay? Everybody with me so far? So this is where we're at right now. We got a high concentration of hydrogen ions in here. We got a whole bunch of electrons in here. Okay? At the same time that this is going on, this is going on. So light is also hitting photosystem 1, exciting the electrons. High energy state. Down a really small, tiny little electron transport chain. Okay? And they get added on to an enzyme called NAD reductase, which means its job is to reduce NADP. So it's going to add those excited electrons on NADP to form NADPH. Okay? The electrons that were passed here replace the ones that were lost here. You understand what I mean by that? Okay? So these get excited, leave, get replaced by water splitting. These get excited, leave. These get replaced by the ones that started here. All right, so that's how we keep the amount of electrons that we need in each photosystem. These all then need to diffuse, facilitated diffusion. They can't, because this, remember, ions can't go through membranes. So they have our friend ATP synthase, just like in our cell mitochondria membrane, diffuses through, phosphorylates ADP to ATP. This is not energy that the plant is going to use to do cell work. This is energy, and this is energy that the plant is going to use in the Calvin cycle. Okay? Everybody got that? Does that help explain what's going on there?